Good evening. It's early evening here on the east coast of the USA. I want to thank Alan for that very smooth transition. My name is Gary Hendershot, and I'm now doing the button pushing from my secret underground bunker just moments south of Washington, D.C., where Matt Navarro tells me the New World Odor hangs out, or so I'm told. But right now on the schedule, I'd like to introduce our first presenters from our U.S. production side, Dr. Dean Lloyd of Accutone.com and Rosen from Lifegame.com, and I'm going to bring them live now. Guys, I think you've got it.
Thank you, good sir, and hi to all you good people out there listening. My name is Rosen. I'm a philosopher, author, health consultant, and facilitator of the evolutionary unfoldment of human potential. And along with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Dean Lloyd, we're here to further your understanding of what functionally, not just idealistically, but functionally constitutes life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, in thinking about today's show, an old image came to my mind. It was on the back of Leonard Cohen's third album, Songs of Love and Hate. And in the back cover, there was a kind of hyper-ecstatic picture of him grinning like he just won the spiritual orgasmic bingo. And the caption under it said, "They locked up a man who wanted to rule the world. The fools? They locked up the wrong one." Do we want to rule the world? I want to facilitate its potential, its unfoldment. That means helping each and every individual and collectivity to become more secure, more in control, more open. I certainly want to thank and salute the many incredible contributions that have been already presented today. But we're going to be kicking some ideas around, Dean and I, today. We'd like you to think about. And of course, we'd love to get into these in absolute depth. You know, we can give them to you. But right now, we're trying to make you aware that what's going on and that there are alternatives, because that's what we're looking for. The problem we're facing right now, I like to sum up as space age technology versus Stone Age emotions. You know, in the Stone Age, some guy has bigger muscles and he gets a bigger club and he can pretty much work his will. The other guys flock around him. They become a little group. They have to defend their territory, women, folk, and children, and they have to defend it against other guys that have big clubs. Through the generations, over time, we've refined that big club, but we're still using that big club mentality. The club may not just be physical, it may be economic, it may be enforced or indoctrinated mindsets. One of our presidents used to famously say, "Talk softly, but carry a big stick." And this is pretty much what's going on now, that our approach to everything is control. But as we get into space age technology, where we can unlock genetic structuring and altering, we can not only recombine chemicals to force and override systems, biological systems, ecological systems, but we can do it on the quantum level. My goodness, I've been reading what some of the boys are working on and hoping to bring forth. The problem is that all of this, the business cycles, the spiritual orientations, the education system, it's all being run through Stone Age emotional patterns, which make this accumulation of power. Power is not good or bad. Power is not right or wrong. Power is a means of accessing some energy source and directing it. But if you put that source of power in the hands of someone who has problems, issues, they don't know what to do with it, they're going to go for what they know. This is operating from old patterns that have come down to us since our species first emerged. Meanwhile, our intellects and our inventive brilliance are leaping forward. And the discrepancy is driving us all to distraction. You know, you think about the people in the boardrooms. We talk about that. The CEOs, the people plotting and manipulating to consolidate. They go home to their family. They think they're good people. They're righteous people because, hey, I'm just smarter than the other guy. I was able to make things happen the way I want to. But, you know, I'm doing good things. You know, people will be starving because we've become so interdependent on the structures we've created that have allowed for mass population to concentrate, accumulate, and expand. But in a particular situation, they may perform brilliantly. They obviously have a certain degree of competency, discipline, and intelligence. But in terms of managing power, they're not managing it. They're being managed by their subconscious patterns. They don't even realize it. This is going up and down the food chain. And this is a problem because we need people who are free of this, who can see what's available and what's the best way to use these resources for the good of all. You know, I sometimes think about what is needed now to correct the horrific imbalances that are threatening people, that have people running for shelter or people running for more controls. You know, we're talking about mind control and all this, which I'd like to get into. But I've been looking for an overarching system, not one that replaces what is, you know, that not you, that this is the right, wrong, but one that slips over the whole entire global geosphere, the whole mindset of humanity at whatever level it can take into account all these factors and harmonize it. Rather than the mindset of scarcity, where you need a big club to make sure you at least get your part of it and damn the consequences and anybody that gets in your way, going from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of plenitude. In other words, using the same healing model that's involved in bringing a body and a mind into dynamic balance, into a new level of comfort, and applying that to the whole geosphere, the whole human condition. And these are some of the things that we want to kick around today. I've got a lot to share with you, but let me get my friend in here. Dean, come on, jump in and let's get this conversation rocking and rolling.
Absolutely. So thank you, Am, and good to hear your voice again. When Am mentions Stone Age motions, most of you out there may have the thought, oh, I know what that looks like. But I want to clarify what a Stone Age emotional pattern is. If we were to examine the way we acted at 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, and how I want that, or I want to do that, and then you're told, you can't do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that. I'll show you. In other words, it becomes childish patterns that are not understanding what the parameters are to work within. When you give someone access, for example, someone who's attained a position in authority, maybe it's a judge, you know, maybe it's a congressman or woman, it may not be a reasonable place for that person to be. In other words, just because they're there doesn't mean they deserve the right to be in that position. What Am is pointing out is that the people that are running the show aren't really running the show. They're just having greater access. And that the emotional patterns in these people, anything can be justified if they say, it's mine, I should have this. And the power is out of balance. Power has no mind of its own. And there is the deep patterns that are running you and I. Unless we recognize them, we can either be controlled by them. Oh, I feel this way because you said that and you did that and that makes me mad and it's your fault. Well, when we project onto others as causing our instability, our unhappiness, we lose the power. We give it away. We don't have the ability to regain our own composure because it's running us. It's running the show. So to understand what we talked about last night a lot into the fear mechanism, which is not understanding. What is it you're afraid of? What is it that you're inadequate for? What is it that is keeping you from excelling? What is happening now is that people are getting more and more awake, more and more aware of what is happening that's not working. And what we did in our show last night was focus on things that were. And to do this, we have to understand what these emotional patterns are doing to us. In other words, how are we not resolved with what we are trying to accomplish? Are we resenting what we're doing? Are we mad at ourselves? Are we picking on ourselves? Asking these questions, and we're preparing what we hope will be a great discussion for many others to join in on, is what are appropriate responses to these problems. Not just throwing it out there like I can impress you to say how bad it is. Oh yeah, well I'm going to one-up you and tell you how bad it is over here. That's getting sucked in. But we want to clearly define for you what a productive emotion is or productive feeling is, to be able to acknowledge what is and what isn't working. And that was the crux of our show last night. Pam.
Yes, Dean. Dean mentioned, we want to clear this up because it's very important. I've often said, which other people have said, you can't get out of a trap until you recognize that you're in a trap. If you accept a sense of inner discomfort, disquiet, apprehension, anxiety, as being, well, that's just part of the human condition, as everybody goes through that, and that's where it's at. If you accept it, that you don't think you're trapped, you think this is the way it's supposed to be, and you downwardly adjust around that. Now, you can be brilliant. You can quote philosophers, psychologists, scientific, and that's all that stuff may have a relevance. But is that is that what's running the show for you? Most people right now, against their reason, their desire and their better judgment are subconsciously being run by the irrationality of their feeling patterns. You wouldn't choose to make your life a living misery. If there's a problem, it has to be handled. It may become difficult, or you may be able to get through it, but that's the problem. That's the activity. How are we going to do it? But to constantly live in a state of anxiety, even if you're denying it, you're trying to override it, or you've found mental outlooks that are superior to that, and you've disciplined yourself. I won't go there. This is the way I'll be because this will make my life better. Who are you talking to? Who are you thinking this to? You're thinking it to the feelings that make you uncomfortable inside. Feelings control the physical responses. No matter what you think or purposely avoid thinking about, everything you feel goes through the visceral organs and creates tissue disposition in the body. No matter how much you've convinced people of what, you may not be comfortable inside. We look at the people who have achieved great things in art and business and science, and yet we often hear how confused or miserable or exaggerated their lives can become, quite often detrimentally. Certainly, they exude a level of competence. But that's part of the conditioning that we've developed through the years. You can do it for the marketplace, for the workplace. You can go off and use your intelligence, your ability to discern situations, analyze people, see what's the best way to bring it together. But as part of the confusion that's happened over the course of human development, you don't feel you can do it in behalf of your own self. You go home and you go dummy up. Where does all that ability go? And a lot of that, as Dean was mentioning, is the product of fear. You can't, to paraphrase, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve both fear and understanding. And everybody needs to ask themselves, who am I serving? Am I serving my fears or am I serving my understanding? Well, if you understood, you certainly wouldn't be serving fear. If you're being ridden by fear, then ignorance is the driver. The fear comes from a defended misunderstanding. You want to be right. What does that mean? Ultimately, it means this idea of yourself by which you hold yourself together. You think this is who I am and I must maintain it in order to exist. You defend yourself. I want to be right. I don't want to miss out. I want to be safe. I want to be secure. I want to get my share of the goodies. So you want to be right. Now, your ideas about what makes you right, you may have gotten them from other people, or you may be a very intelligent thinker who's able to use reason and logic, analysis, and you can take apart these ideas and see how well they really represent what you need and what's worthwhile. I think it's this to be a man, or this to be a woman, or this to be a citizen, or whatever. And if you have a little bit of skill, we can examine and say, well, let's see what you're basing that on. But more insidiously and more dominantly right now, and this needs to change, and it's not that hard to change it when you know what you're doing, a lot of your rightness comes from, I know what you're saying, it makes, okay, I can see what you're saying, but I can't help it. This is the way I feel about things. When you say, this is how I feel, you're saying of all when something comes up for you, when something stimulates your awareness, an idea, a person, a situation, this is how I respond to it. Of all the ways that you might respond to something, you're locked in irrationally to a subconscious pattern that you learned. Somebody was mentioning earlier today mind control. A lot of people, you want to maintain your power position. Maybe you rationalize, you can justify anything to yourself. Yeah, I'm doing this for the good of people. This is better. Yeah, there'll be some problems, but look at the things we're solving. We'll fix those problems later. That's been the basic trend, the basic tendency. But basically, the feelings can justify anything. This is why people don't understand aberrant acts. How can people who are educated and understand what humanity needs, for the sake of short-sighted expediency to give them access and power, how can they pollute the planet? How can we pollute our citizenry? We want to control things. A lot of this comes from behavioral conditioning. And behavioral conditioning works on a very elementary level of the subconscious. It's a parasite of sort. It's a social parasite, a psychological parasite, in that most people are not aware of why they respond, feel the way they do. And a lot of it is based off of the primal needs of maintaining the body. So if we can get in there, electromagnetic waves or ideas that you've grown up to, that you cling to because you don't know how else to placate the anxiety that builds up inside of you, and we can trigger those, you'll respond. There has to be host receptivity before a parasite can take hold and do its work. And that parasite may be a biological organism. It may be a social approach to indoctrination. If you have full and clear access to what's been called the subconscious, it's just your feeling response level, and there are gradients of this. If you understand it, if you can break up the log jams, see why you respond the way you do, where it came from, and no longer be automatically subject to that level of response. It's there if you want to use it. You can recombine it. You can discard it. Well, then there's no buttons to be pushed, and you can move on. Think of how much energy we have individually and collectively across the board been wasting trying to compensate, alibi, escape, deny, and avoid the feelings we have that make us uncomfortable. And think of how that obscures our ability to see things clearly and the detrimental effect it has not only on our own bodies, but on the global body politic of humanity. Think if we were no longer wasting that energy is returned to you. You it's still the same environment, same situation, but you no longer respond to it the same way. You're clear. You don't become sucked in. Now think if you're finding intelligent, because there's a lot of hustling out there, intelligent techniques, and no tin gods, please, but all techniques come down to focus and concentration. Finding ways of not only not wasting that energy, but refurbishing and expanding and clarifying the system. It's still the same environment, same table, same street, same chair, same people, but your way of responding to it becomes differently. This is part of what we have been striving for since the Stone Age, to be able to create enough access and comfort to where we could finally evolve past these primitive responses and really unfold human potential. But right now, we're stuck and we're stuttering. What do you think, Dean?
I wanted to ask the audience for themselves, when you bring up these subconscious emotional patterns, then how does one know if they're operating from a subconscious emotional pattern that's not working for them? And the first thing that comes to me when someone would ask that question is say, is there any part of me that feels insecure? And that takes a lot of honesty. It takes a lot of introspection. And sometimes there's a disconnect. There's a, I don't want to feel that pattern. I don't care if it runs me or not. I don't want to look at it. Well, this is not Am and I's mission. We want to look at it. If there's something that makes us uncomfortable, we look at it. We say, whoa, what is that that's going on there that's causing us to be uncomfortable, or any part of us to be uncomfortable or not clear? Then it's dive into it, because it's easier to run from something, to ignore it and criticize, rather than to go into where we aren't clear or secure or have control over. And this is what we're telling you is you're capable of doing and having access to, but you've never been told this before. It's never been brought to your awareness before, and we're providing you insight into how this can be done. But by first letting you know it can be done, we want to know that when you have any degree of doubt, any degree of fear, any kind of confusion, any degree of anything you don't understand, that's what those things are. When you have them running the show, then everything becomes, rationalized and like Am was saying, we can kill a bunch of people, but that's okay. I'm getting ahead in my company, and we're, getting all these resources, and for that reason, it's worth it. It's worthwhile. And then there builds up this constant degree of a power struggle instead of being independent and secure. So what does it look like when you're someone secure? Does that mean you're running away from disease, from financial matters, from your relationships? All those things should never, and I say this in a way where you'd run if you saw some danger coming down the street, like a herd of elk. I was out on the country road one evening, and it was nighttime, and I literally had to move out of the way of a herd of elk that were charging. I don't know what they're running from. I don't know if it was coyotes or whatever. But I had to run from that. I mean, there was a stampede of sorts that I had to get out of the way. I don't mean that. What I'm saying is that when you're having any of these feelings come up that are making you uncomfortable, I suggest you put your attention to it, saying, what is this that's causing me so much insecurity, so much fear, so much doubt, whatever it is that comes up for you? And then you have the opportunity to challenge what those feelings are and say, okay, are these appropriate for the situation? Maybe they're not. Maybe they are. Well, if you look at some of the decisions that are being made that aren't in your best interest in the government, it's easy to point the finger, but do you really think that they care about what you think? I would say that they're more interested in what they're doing for their own positions rather than your well-being. And then when you turn it around on yourself and say, okay, what is it in me that's causing a disruption, an imbalance. I would say that is your ability to turn the whole stage around, change the environment, have the opportunity to pick up where someone had never picked up before, and then say, okay, I want to understand how this was put in place. And when you do, and a lot of all the different guests on the show and that are talking about how they were able to discover how radiation is being, released into our world in a very hazardous level, and how not only the GMO in foods or the water pollution, and I can go on, EMFs and so on, all these need to be addressed but not be run by them, because I've seen over the years people lose their ability to regain their power after feeling overwhelmed. This is the opposite of where we're heading. In other words, those of us that want to understand will know that the energy that we're putting isn't in a place of being drained, it's in solution-oriented, and this is why we have the show. This is our foundation. So, Am, please pick up.
Thank you, Dean. Well, let's take this space age technology versus Stone Age model and apply it to the healing model of approach versus the maintain sickness model of approach. Coming back to that big club orientation from the Stone Age side, all right, we need more food here. We need the soil to produce more. We found out that we could take petroleum, break it down into petrochemicals, break up the constituents. If the soil had more of this, then it would be able to produce more of that. In that way, we'll force feed it into the soil. But you're not bringing up the quality of the soil, bringing up the quality of the plant that will grow out of it. You're force feeding, you're biochemically overriding a particular reaction in the soil, and you get a crop that does exude some of the characteristics you were looking for, but it's also more imbalanced. Nature sends blight, pestilence, to destroy things which are not working. So we take more of that petroleum, petrochemicals, and we come up with a way of killing the blight. Great. Now we're growing inferior crops. Plenty to put in you. You may not get enough out of it, but there's chemicals that are toxic in them now. Okay, well, that's creating a lot of problems in the body. It's adding to the imbalance of the body. Well, let's take some more of those petrochemicals, and we'll now start to, just like we did to the soil, we'll start to force the body to react. We will say, okay, when the body performs at a certain level, it exudes this chemical constituency of balance. We will force these chemical constituencies to be front and center. But of course, you're forcing. It's the big stick approach. It's the sickness approach. We've built that as a part of negative recycling into the food chain, which is affecting all of us, and it's going back and forth. When I look at somebody who has a problem, whatever the problem is, and whatever it is in the body, it's going to have effects on the nervous system. Whatever's going on in your mind is going to influence the quality of your body. But my first question is, why is this part of the body susceptible? Of all the things that could break down, where's the weak link? Why is this the part that's being influenced? What is deficient? What are the contributing and facilitating other parts of the metabolism doing or not doing that's allowing for this to take place? And what does the body need to be coaxed, to be provided with what it needs to rectify itself? Because part of its genetic patterning is to maintain. That means to try to correct. But we get in the way of that. We either put the wrong thing in, poor quality, we gum up the works, or we don't give it enough of what it adequately needs. Now, when we look at the absence of sickness is not health, any more than the absence of pain is pleasure. But of course, you don't want to be sick. But health is a dynamic adaptation to consciousness interacting with the body. In a scientific laboratory, you run an experiment where you can control all the variables precisely. The source material, how you affect them, the temperature, whatever. You can get very verifiable, measurable results. But when you put things in the human crucible of the body, or the alchemical crucible of society, where environmental changes are acting with genetic expression, which are acting with patterns of feeling response, which lock up and dispose the organs, which are acting with ways of mentally directing your awareness through the intellect and peak experiences, all of this blending in, well, then it's not a sickness model we need. We need a health model. And the art of health is individual application. But not wanting to be sick, as I said, is not the same as health. To really bring forth this as a model, you have to include the way consciousness is interacting with the body. You see, a lot of our models are just based on the physical level. And if we were running wild in the Stone Age, people were talking about sugars and things. They don't grow on trees. We have to refine them. The chemicals we're using don't grow on trees. They had to be refined. The animal isn't running wild, just responding to the natural cueing signals in the environment, the seasons, the sun, the moon, the temperatures. Now we've invented the electric light. We've invented mass transportation. We've used our intellect, and the impact of all this is affecting the way the body is. We've domesticated the animal. But in and of itself, the body does not know what to do with these exceptional changes that our inventive brilliance has brought about. Our bodies can, will, and should be coaxed into adapting, but they don't know what to do. You need to have a sense of what your output is, what's being used up from the body, what your demands are, and emotions and your mental outlook affect the performance of your body so that you can direct the body how to use these things. I get people that walk in with shopping bags of vitamins they bought because it's telling them you could have this and that and the other. They don't understand. And they start swallowing them. The body doesn't know what to do. You're locked into patterns of response that have caused the body to become imbalanced. Suddenly you're flooding it with available nutrients, but you're still locked into these patterns of response. You need to have a working sense, whether it's for your body or for our collective social body, of how to best utilize these things, how to manage them. Why? Because the physical is the vehicle for consciousness. It's how we get around in this plane of existence. And you can have all the best accoutrements materially, champagne, caviar, the beautiful lover that seems to want you, but you may be too uptight, too physically broken down to be able to really take advantage of it. So it's the state of mind we're talking about. And fear, as I said right now, is what's running society from up and down the food chain. And fear comes from a couple of levels. There's a primal split. Everything that comes into existence that has some degree of responding to existence comes in with the idea of trying to maintain itself against going out of existence. As I said, you pour the petrochemicals on the soil, in the food chain, you put it into the body, and you get mutations of cells because the body can't adequately reproduce. But those mutated cells now exist. They want to exist. This is a kind of a blindness that we keep recycling. I call it dynamic disequilibrium. We are so dependent. What would we do if suddenly there was no power grid? What would we do if we couldn't get food trucked in? A few people I know are prepared for that, but we're talking about the masses. But it's not in a state of balance that keeps recycling and building and making it better. It's in a state of scarcity here and too much there, and go for what you can. Again, the big club approach, Stone Age emotions. We want a space-age quality of intelligence, of consciousness, not just intellectual wishful thinking. and idealism. That's great as pointing you to a direction to explore, but one that's fully integrated, where all these primitive patterns that have dominated us for too long are gone, and we are really free to see where we can take this show. What do you think, Dean?
Thinking of the new teacher, like what is it that because we spoke on this an earlier show on the education process. We're providing insight into where health is coming from. Is it coming from dis-ease, a running away from disease? The answer is no. It's moving into what's appropriate for whatever circumstances that are needed at the time. And that means that if you're trying to train for, let's say, a marathon, or there's a competition coming up, well, there's reasons why you would want to take extra protein, for example, because the demand on the body is higher, or you would need to exercise more, you would get more sleep, you would put yourself in a position or space to be able to meet the demand. Now, if the case comes in to where I'm craving to be healthy, although I'm so stuck, I'm too toxic, I'm too tired, I don't have, well, if your body has not been able to attain the nutrients, even though you've been pouring them in you, why is it that you're not recovering? And one major reason is because most people have been sabotaging their ability to become happy, healthy, integrated emotionally. And just as a heroin addict doesn't crave the healthy food, healthy vegetables, healthy fruits, it craves heroin. That's an addict. That's someone who has trained their brain to take on a drug. Now, what we're talking about is facilitating transitions, making it so that you can recognize where it's an appropriate place for you to put a particular amount of energy in a particular way. If you're not able to expand because you're hurt, then don't expand. Put yourself where you're hurt. And I would submit that when I'm seeing with most of my patients is they would come to me saying, please, Dr. Dean, take me out of pain. I'm in pain. I would see that as being, necessary at the time. What is interesting is that when they're out of pain, are they interested in seeing how good they can feel? And what Am is talking about here is the exchange of a proper, level of understanding how you operate to put yourself in a place of choosing what's the best way of facilitating health. It isn't, going to work if you're taking antidepressants all the time, saying, I'm going to overcome depression because I'm taking antidepressants. You will never overcome depression with antidepressants. That's not how it works. You overcome depression by feeding yourself what your body needs, and requirements are that you give it the nutrients that build vitality. That's why when you have, a public, like we are, a society that is being constantly given the fear of not being able to overcome, they don't have the ability to resolve their emotional problems, keep them in fear, keep them down, keep them running. That's when they're manipulated. That's when they're easy and they're malleable. We don't have that problem. We want to resolve it for you by answering what it is that's not resolved yet. And this is the piece that comes into how are we coming together in our separate disciplines to be able to offer what we have that contribute to resolving it in this manner. So, Am, please pick up.
Yeah, well, the thing is this. The more secure you are inwardly, not because you've sold yourself a bill of goods or managed to at least secure, and I wish you all the best, really, the more ready you are to play and interact. There's beauty in sharing and opening up and exchanging because you want to be there. You get to be there. There's no beauty in being there out of compulsion or feeling forced to, or if you don't participate, you'll be in trouble. Fear essentially is a containment field. Fear creates it creates inner sabotage, because fear, it makes you back away. Okay, I'll live a second-class life. I won't question things too much. I won't dare to do what I want to do. Just please don't hurt me. Don't let me be hurt, and that's backing away. That's shutting down. If someone puts a containment field over you that limits your range of motion, puts constant pressure on you, you have essentially three choices. The first, and of course the best one, would be get rid of the damn thing and go about your business. But if you don't know how to do that, and that's what we'd like to get to here and share with you, but if you don't know how to do that, then the second choice is, well, I'll fight the good fight. I may be uncomfortable, but I won't give in. I have my ideals. I know this is a better way to be, and I'm not comfortable, and, well, good for you. Bravo. That's where a lot of good people are right now. But that constant burden on you, that constant anxiety, it will wear you down prematurely. It will curtail your ability to truly interact and enjoy. Depression is being stuck. It's not just a physical thing. Obviously, if you're devitalized, you can't participate in life as fully. But there are a lot of cases people feel stuck. They don't want to feel the way they do, but they do. They don't know how to break the grip of that responsiveness. And again, it's not that hard to do when you understand it. The third choice, which unfortunately too many people go for, is, well, I just don't want to deal with it. In other words, you don't have to get out of the crap if you accept that you'll be in the crap. But that does make life a little crappy for you. So when you get tired of that because your avoidance has created so much unhappiness in you, so much pain, so much suffering, pain is a blocked flow of energy, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, that you got nothing to lose except your misery, then you have to start finding some way to kick yourself back out of that morass that you accepted in the first place. Now, I'm sure if I asked people in mass, do you want to be afraid? They'd say no. But it's not like somebody's holding a gun to your head and saying, if you don't keep yourself in a state of fear, doubt, confusion, anxiety, guilt, and shame, I'll blow your brains out. No, nobody's doing that. We're doing that to ourselves. And this is the war zone in each of us. And what we can do to ourselves, we do to each other. It extends right out into that Stone Age, I at least have the bigger club, so I'll be maybe better off or safer. It's this war between how we think things can be, and maybe with really good reasoning and scientific backup, and how we feel irrationally compelled to respond to things. And the body, our physical bodies and the body politic, suffers the brunt of it. So it's this is the trap right now that humanity is stuck in. But understand this, in terms of when we look at the atrocities, the stupidities, the waste of energy that is being done, because the people in charge, good for them, they've achieved something, aren't psychologically integrated and don't know how to manage things for themselves beyond, well, okay, I've built my fortress and I've got my accumulation, but they don't know how to let things flow. They can't do it for you if they can't do it for themselves. The resources are stuck. This is fear across the board. And the resolution to this is the next level of consciousness. It's fourth level consciousness. First level is your physical senses. You perceive the world through them. Second level, with a number of gradients coming up from deep unconsciousness up to semi-waking consciousness, are the feeling levels, the subconscious it's called. Then you have your intellectual sense of yourself, how you perceive yourself. But that has its own good things and its own pitfalls. It's not until people learn, and people have touched on it. There have been prototypical exemplars that we tend to put up on pedestals. They didn't come here to be put up on pedestals. They came here to get you off of, out of your dungeon. But we need to start to be able to take control of these first three levels of perception. They are tools of consciousness. But right now, the tools are running amok. They're running us. And it's only from fourth level that you can see the whole ball of wax. You can start to, at will, change the responses that are no longer serviceable, recombine them, and expand, and do it safely and securely. Dean, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk more about the fear triggers themselves. And just to remind our audience that whatever the people have done to themselves, however they've convinced themselves as being necessary, no matter how horrible it is, they'll do to you if you let them. And we want you not to get stuck into that trap. And the fear triggers, let's find out where we get stuck if we allow ourselves to. For example, what are they? And if we get in this place where we become really energized, too energized, in fact, and people are afraid that they don't have enough energy, that means that you bring up what's in the way. Or if they get too confident for what they don't have, then where's their confidence? If they're asking, they're demanding that it come to the surface, it be available for them. Let's talk a little bit about that. Am, your answer.
Well, you know, Dean, and all of you, if you go to my website and you look under in the middle of the homepage, you'll see something called the Geigers. And it's a summation of 3 ways of it's psychologically infallible. You can always gauge where you're at, but one of the Geigers deals with fear. And anytime you have any sense of fear, whether it's a momentary, what was that? I don't even know. Glad that's gone. Or you're stuck in it. It's built to paranoia. You can't get out of it. It's dominating your life and shutting you down. All fear, doubt, confusion, and anxiety comes from 2 things. One, you don't yet really understand what you're dealing with. You may have intellectual ideas about it that are brilliant. You may have all kinds of information. You may be ahead of the game compared to other people, but you don't yet truly understand what's involved, how it's structured, its range of motion, how it can be accessed. You can't pick it up, put it down, or leave it alone. But not only do you not understand, but you either think by conscious design, yeah, well, this is how it's supposed to be, and I've read this and I got these statistics or whatever, which may have some validity, but it's not an understanding. Or more insidiously, you feel that this is how it's supposed to be because you want to be right. This rightness is your sense of justifying your existence to yourself. You may not realize it, but that's what you're doing. Of course, you can't be wrong if you don't have to be right. But as soon as you start saying, this is it, this is how you need to be a man or to be rich or whatever it is, whatever your bill of goods you're selling yourself, then you go into a defensive posture. You'll feel threatened by the fact because you don't really understand. You're not sure. You're trying to say, okay, this will give me the advantage. I will relegate and enforce this as the way it has to be. And anything that threatens your supposed rightness, well, you become toughened up. You become layered, armored, and somewhat desensitized. You don't want to look at anything that might make you wrong. This is a trap. As soon as you have any degree of fear, doubt, confusion, or anxiety, you automatically know whatever I'm dealing with, you're dealing with something. Is it health? Is it sexual relationships? Is it raising children? Is it business? Is it something you're dealing with? Is it God? Whatever you're dealing with, you don't understand it, but you're in a defensive posture. Once you recognize that, well, then I don't understand, obviously. Now, you may have to tell somebody else you understand. Situations may be such that that's part of survival at the moment. But you never want to lie to yourself. If your only truth in any given moment of awareness, any consideration, is that you don't yet understand, and obviously you don't, then that will keep you safe. It takes you out of that place of having to be a target for your own self-justification. Okay, what am I dealing with? You're dealing with something. How am I dealing with it? Well, where did these ideas or these feelings of this I should come from? And you do need to develop some skills in being able to quickly and efficiently take this apart. It's not that hard when you know how to do it. Then you see that you're no longer in this defensive posture. You start to become open. receptive. For a change, you're paying attention, not trying to push everything through the filter, the mindset filter that you've established as a criterion, but you're saying, okay, that offers some things. It's not complete. What else is going on? You could say you move into a state of grace. I kind of like to talk about the difference between modesty and humility. Now, modesty is social deportment. How do you deport yourself in society? And some people get very arrogant and tyrannical about social deportment. If you don't fit in with our way of looking at things, well, we may do nasty things to you, jail you, persecute you, tar and feather you, might even put you up on a cross. Regardless of outer appearance, that has nothing to do with humility. Humility is a state of open receptivity, where you inwardly intone towards the greater potential of your own awareness. I don't understand yet. Please give me the information. Guide me. I need help. It's becoming open to the process of life that you find yourself to be a part of. Of course, there's that part which you have control over. And you are creating within it to whatever degree you've learned to do that. But there is that which is creating you. It's kind of like taking the co-creative position where part of the time you are the creator and part of the time you're being created, and striking a balance so that you don't waste time defending misunderstanding. The fear leaves you. How do you know when you understand? When it's clear, simple, direct. You can pick it up, put it down, rearrange it at will, or leave it alone. It's always available in your psychological tool chest. Then, given a chance to play, you're no longer afraid. Why not? Because if you don't like it, you have the means to pull back, reevaluate, and change according to your needs. Go ahead, Dean, jump in, because I know we're getting close here.
Yeah, we're getting close to the time. What I just wanted to close in saying is that there's an imbalance of where power should be put in our world. We need to put more emphasis on where we're going rather than being stuck in the past. There are a lot of people out there that are insisting that this is going to be horrible, that the way that we are heading, that we're doomed for some major catastrophe. I would just submit that it's time that we stop putting so much energy in that place and putting energy into where we're headed. This is so incredibly clear on these points, and we have got to get this message out so that we, are able to connect with those that are ready to hear us, because we're not confused. We're ready to take on whatever you're wanting to dish out. If it's reasonable and it makes sense and to you, then great, bring it out. But what we are interested in is the evolution in the next stage of our development, not trying to draw on this particular aspect of the problem or that. We will clearly identify how these pieces haven't been understood in the past, and then make sense of what it is that we need to do to resolve it. Because we're resolvers. That's what we'd like to do. And if you've already been listening to us before in our previous shows, we don't break stride. We want to be able to make sure that you can, give us what it is that's getting you stuck, and we'll help provide you with the tools to get, clear on it. So let me just
on that note, we really exactly. I was about to say you almost forgot to do that blatant self-promotion.
Is www.accutone.com, and you'll be able to on my website see my radio show and my book that I wrote in Chinese medicine, and also the clinic information that I have. But the radio shows are what we're focusing on now. And we also have archives of our radio shows on the Genesis Communications Network and Wolf Spirit Radio Network, and of course, United We Strike, the wonderful people here. And Am, please give us that information for you.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, well, my website is www.lifegame, Lifegame, like the game of life, lifegame.com. And you will find, as Dean mentioned, a lot of archives of our shows. I've got a little tech catching up to do. Just finally got after a few technical glitches, my podcast library. The beginning of it is up. There's a 2-part introduction, where I'm coming from, what I'm offering, and then there's the first 3 categories I've started on consciousness, on health, and on the art of intimacy. You'll also find on the homepage the Geigers, an outline summary, and as I said, they're psychologically infallible. If you learn, and all learning has a mechanical phase, to apply them, they'll save you a tremendous amount of confusion and aggravation. There's also an outline of the process I've created, something I've offered to many people, but I hope to get out to other professionals since I can only touch so many people individually. But these are insights for you to think about. Also, there's some sample excerpts from my 2 most recent books, both some audibles I read for you and a few written samples. That is Cruising the Epiphany Highway, Volume 1 and Volume 2. A lot of good stuff there. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd like to know about your questions and concerns. We want to make sense to you. We don't want you to believe. We want to facilitate your understanding clearly. Because as I said, you're a lot more fun to play with and relate to when you're coming from a secure, clear space. And so I want to thank all of you for allowing us to share with you and lending your consideration and wishing you the best.
Dr. Dean Lloyd, Rosen. I want to thank you so much for participating in this month's United We Strike Marathon. But man, I'll tell you what, we ate up every second. I got to break us out of here real quick.